a cinematic, realistic illustration of classical Western economic thinkers. Adam Smith writing at a wooden desk with candlelight, Karl Marx standing with papers and books, Aristotle in ancient Greek robes holding a scroll. Old parchment textures, classical library background, warm golden lighting, oil painting realism, serious intellectual atmosphere, historical accuracy, no modern objects. Ultra-detailed 16 by 9 aspect ratio, documentary style. And when we look at the world today, it becomes clear he may have understood us far better than we think. Welcome to the place where money, power, and history collide, and where nothing is ever as simple as it looks. To understand Al-Ghazali, we need to imagine a world that feels both familiar and foreign. The year is around 1100. Europe is fragmented, poor, and still struggling to emerge from the darkness of the Middle Ages. Meanwhile, the Islamic world stretches from Spain to Persia, ruling over a vast and prosperous territory. Baghdad, Damascus, Cairo. These cities are not just crowded, they are wealthy, vibrant, and intellectually powerful. Trade routes are alive with movement. Caravans carry silk, spices, silver, and textiles across continents. Markets are buzzing. Scholars debate in madrasas. Wealth is growing. Life is accelerating. But this rapid rise in prosperity does not bring peace. And this is exactly where Al-Ghazali enters the story. Born in 1058 in Persia, Abu Hamid Al-Ghazali was a philosopher, jurist, theologian, and a remarkably sharp observer of society. At a young age, he rose to one of the most prestigious academic positions in the Islamic world. But what made him extraordinary wasn't his status. It was his refusal to ignore what others overlooked. He saw a society that appeared to be flourishing on the outside, but decaying from within. He noticed that as wealth increased, meaning diminished, that people were becoming richer, but not calmer, not wiser, just more greedy. And he asked a question very few dared to ask. What happens when a society becomes rich before it becomes wise? To answer it, he turned his attention directly to money itself. This is where modern audiences are often surprised. Al-Ghazali wasn't just a religious thinker. He was one of the earliest figures to analyze money not only as an economic tool, but as a moral, psychological, and social force. To him, money was never an end in itself. It was never something to be worshipped. Money was only a tool. He compared money to a mirror. A mirror has no value on its own. Its worth comes from what it reflects. Money is the same. It is not valuable because it is gold or silver, but because it allows people to exchange fairly, cooperate, and build together. From this perspective, he reached a powerful conclusion. Hoarded money is dead money. Wealth locked away in chests, hidden from circulation, does nothing for society. It doesn't feed workers, it doesn't grow trade, it doesn't create hope. Instead, it freezes the economic bloodstream. Al-Ghazali described it as freezing the veins of society. And the problem wasn't just individual greed, it was systemic. When money stops circulating, artificial scarcity appears. Prices distort, trust erodes, and the people who suffer most are ordinary citizens. From here came another sharp warning. Speculation destroys trust. Al-Ghazali openly condemned those who profited from crises, who inflated prices deliberately, who turned human desperation into opportunity. To him, this wasn't intelligence, it was moral decay. Whoever profits from the suffering of others, he wrote, profits from corruption. And corruption spreads. Once it begins, it moves from markets to institutions and eventually consumes the entire society. But it's important to pause here. Al-Ghazali was not against trade. He was not against profit. He believed markets were necessary. He believed wealth could be valuable if used properly. What he opposed was dishonest gain, cheating, lying, false measurements, hiding defects, manipulating information. because to him, markets depend on one thing above all else: trust. When trust collapses, the economy follows. Concepts we now call information asymmetry, moral hazard, and transaction costs were ideas Al-Ghazali explained 1,000 years ago without technical language. He also placed enormous value on labor. Money earned through work, he believed, strengthened the individual. Money gained without effort corrupted the soul. Societies grow stronger through contribution and weaker through exploitation. And then there was the state, Al-Ghazali strongly opposed rulers who manipulated currency. In the medieval world, leaders often reduced the gold or silver content of coins to cover budget shortfalls, an early form of what we now call inflation. Al-Ghazali called this exactly what it was: theft. Debasing currency silently impoverishes people, especially the poor. It destroys trust, and eventually people abandon their own money in favor of currencies they believe in more. 1,000 years later, this is exactly what happened in Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, and Argentina. Al-Ghazali understood something crucial. Money is a belief system. When people stop believing, the system collapses. But perhaps his deepest insight was this: economies don't run on numbers. They run on people. People hoard because they're afraid. They speculate because they're greedy. They cheat when they think they won't be caught. And when everyone else does the same, they convince themselves it's justified. That's why Al-Ghazali insisted on this principle. You cannot fix an economy without fixing incentives. Laws matter, markets matter, institutions matter. But behind them all is human nature. If systems fail to reward honesty, corruption becomes inevitable. His conclusion was simple and brutal. A society can survive poverty, but it cannot survive corruption. Because economic collapse doesn't begin when money runs out. It begins when trust does. When we look at today's world, rising inequality, speculative bubbles, massive debt, collapsing trust in institutions, we can clearly hear the echo of Al-Ghazali's warnings. Technology changed, speed increased, scale expanded, but human nature didn't. If Al-Ghazali were alive today, he would likely repeat what he said 1,000 years ago. When justice disappears, prosperity cannot remain. Economies don't collapse because the numbers fail. They collapse because values do. Money is not a mechanical tool. It is a moral ecosystem. And when that ecosystem breaks, the financial system follows. That's why Al-Ghazali still matters today. His message isn't just history, it's a warning. When money is detached from morality, the system will eventually break. Understanding history remains our strongest protection against being crushed by the future. And if this gave you a new perspective, history has the answers, and I'll show you where to find them.